All right. You know what it is? You know who it is. We're back. The Fight Cast, episode 13. Another good weekend for the Fight Cast predictions. I really might have to start betting a little bit here. It's legal in Tennessee, so I might have to start putting some money on these things. But we had another good weekend, 2 for 2. The third fight that we picked got canceled. But we're going to start off. We're going to go over this weekend's UFC fights, touch into some boxing news, and then some nice talking about Conor and Dustin. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this fight for a couple months now, and it's finally here this weekend. I've been watching all the Conor interviews and the Dustin interviews, and they had the what do you call it? You know, like how Showtime puts out the pre-fight like videos.
The All Access.
Yeah, All Access. Yeah, except it's the UFC All Access. So those came out. Been watching those, just getting hyped, listening to people's opinions and whatnot. But yeah, so this past weekend, UFC on ABC, the first time they've ever been on ABC, and I think they crushed it. They had a really good card, a lot of good fights. They had Holloway versus Kattar, I guess that's how you pronounce his name. I was saying Kattar. And then Carlos Condit versus not Travis Brown. What's his name? Michael Brown, I think his name is. I forgot his name. But anyways, again, picked both those fights. Condit I really think was just the better fighter. He's longer, just bigger. Kind of outmatched him in a lot of ways and ended up taking it by decision. He had a couple good positions on him, but Brown was also, who's very experienced, kind of found his way out of those positions. There was a couple times I thought the fight was going to get called because Condit had him on top and was just banging on him. But then, he got out and came back up and the fight ended in a draw, or not a draw, ended up by decision, and Condit won. Condit's last fight as well, so I don't know what's going to happen there. I think it was actually both of their last fights. And like I kind of mentioned on the last Fight Cast episode that both of them were kind of fighting for like their quote unquote careers in the UFC here because they were both kind of on the tail end and they both haven't had a good run their last few fights. So, Condit probably won himself a couple more fights in the UFC if he wants it, but we'll see what happens there. And then we had the awesome fight of Holloway versus Kattar. Just a kind of brief overview. I think I picked Holloway by decision, and that's what ended up happening. I said he was going to outclass him, but he absolutely destroyed him. Like, it wasn't even close. And like, it was right from the bell. Max Holloway and like I said, I think what happened here with Holloway, and a lot of people thought Kattar was going to win. And he's got a big hand and he's got a big right hand, and like, he moves well and he throws his punches well, but like, Holloway gets kind of like bagged on because of how his last few fights. And Volkanovski's good. I honestly, I think Holloway won the last fight. So I think that people figured this would be a lot closer, but also Holloway looked significantly better than the last time he was in the, cage against Volkanovski. And he had a record for punches. He was just sharp as hell. He was hitting stuff. He had that sequence towards the end. I don't know when you saw it, but where he started yelling at DC and
I didn't get that part.
And he had that like no look jab that he hit, or the cross that he hit him with, and then like somehow managed to dodge the punch while he wasn't even looking. It was a good show. He put on a good show towards the end, and they were calling that fight of the year, but I think it was really I don't think it was fight of the year. I think it was performance. And so far, obviously, there's been one fight. It was the first fight of the year. But I think Max Holloway, that wasn't a good fight. That was just a good performance by Max Holloway. He fucking destroyed him. He was, like I said, he was hitting everything. He was throwing 4, 5, 6 punch combos. They were sloppy, which Jake's going to get to in a second, but he was still moving. He was throwing those punches. He was really just sharp. And it was from the beginning bell that he was kind of on Kattar and just hitting him. And Kattar didn't really have an answer. He caught Holloway a couple times throughout the fight, but the fight really shifted in the third round when Holloway caught him with a couple elbows, and he caught him. He busted open his head and is just pouring down his face. And from that point, I mean, Kattar is he's a tough motherfucker. Like, he got hit and hit and hit, and he stood there. He didn't get dropped once. There was a couple times I thought he was going down, and Max caught him like third, fourth round where he was like looking like he was done, broke his nose, and he was there at the end. It was able to do the interview after. So he's a tough dude. At some point you got to watch out though, because a lot of those a lot of that damage can like come back to you later in your life and your career. And every punch that you're the tough guy for is, eventually it's gonna shorten your career. So
Coach used
sometimes,
to tell me, my coach used to tell me real early on, tough guys don't last in boxing.
really, it's just
It ain't about fucking taking hits and being tough for someone else. It's about lasting, landing on the guy and not getting landed on.
Yeah,
That tough guy shit don't last.
And it's like I said, I think Max Holloway had a great performance. I think he's deserving of a third fight, or whatever he wants to do against Volkanovski, or whatever he wants to do next. But he crushed it. Again, we were 2 for 2, picked both those fights. And so I don't know if you want to talk about the some things Jake saw in terms of the punching on Holloway that I saw too, and Kattar was just kind of like sloppiness.
Yeah. So just to hit up, I agree that it was a great performance in the sense that Holloway landed, what did he land, like over
700 punches.
Shots?
700 punches.
Yeah, but he landed through like 300 something more than it. Yeah. So it was great in that sense. But look at Holloway's face at the end of the fight.
Yeah.
Like you can't be landing 300 more punches than the other guy and getting fucked up like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you got to move your fucking head, man. I don't like, it drives me nuts with these MMA dudes that so one of the things that was pissing me off right from the get-go is the dude fucking Kattar, Holloway, came out strong, throwing a ton of punches. This dude Kattar, and all MMA guys do this, where they bring their guard up high and try to block everything with the back of their hand, their forearm, right? They put those earmuffs on. Well, the problem in the UFC is that you're wearing those tiny ass fucking 4-ounce gloves. So basically you just got to get your knuckle around the guy's guard. And it's real easy to get behind the guard and tap a guy in the ear or in that area. And these guys are putting that high guard up and still getting hit and then continue to do it. It's like, why don't you fucking try slipping a punch, dummy? You know what I mean? I don't understand. Like, you're getting hit. Like, isn't that the signal? Like, you get fucking walloped. Isn't that the signal to fucking move?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He keeps putting his hand up and it's like, dude, you're still getting hit. Yeah. You're getting hit behind your guard. Move your fucking head. The same thing with Holloway. He's landing all those punches, but a lot of the times, again, even though it was over 300 punches more than fucking Kattar landed, you're still, the majority of those flurries, he was getting caught clean in the middle of them. Yeah. Fucking dude. And part of that was because Holloway, every time he threw a jab, his power hand, he would bring it back, like almost behind his head to, almost like he wanted to get extra reach, which was leaving him wide fucking open. And the other thing that MMA guys do a lot, they lunge into their punches. They're not good at shifting their weight, which is weird to me, seeing as how like balance and weight distribution you would think is like fucking huge when it comes to kicking and like stopping a takedown, right? But so often these guys lunge at, like, they throw punches like they're throwing a baseball, and they let their upper body go over their front leg, like even on jabs, and it looks fucking bad. It puts them out of position. It puts them in position to get hit, and it takes them so long to get back into their stance where they're ready to either defend or throw something off of it. It's really hard for someone like me, like a boxer, to watch. You know what I mean? It's, again, we only use our hands, but because we only have those tools, we are very, very fucking polished at what we do, and so it looks good. It looks clean, right? When these guys throw punches and even their guard, it's really hard to fucking watch, man. And it would have been a much better performance. Like, he didn't need to land 300 more than Kattar. If he landed 100 more and got out of the way of a bunch of punches, it would have been an even better performance.
He probably would have ended it, really.
Yeah. So, I mean, these guys, like, it's got to, at some point, man, like, because I'm seeing it more and more, too, that you're either getting fights where it's all on the ground or it's all standing up. And if you're one of these fighters that's what you like to do, you like to stand up, you got to get better with your hands and your defense. You got to move your fucking head.
Yeah, and that's why, if you saw a fight, like, and that was, and it's true, because there was, what happens, I think what tends to happen here is like these fights where these guys are either very good strikers or very good grapplers. Almost like a couple weeks ago or like a month ago, there was Mackenzie Dern and she fought, I forgot who she fought, but they were both like outstanding grapplers. Like they're both black belts and like they didn't go to the ground and they ended up standing up most of the fight because it's like, we're both good at this, who outweighs the other, but then it ends up, shifting in the opposite direction. The only fight I've, like and this was one of them where it's like, yeah, these guys weren't going to go to the ground. Like it was just clear, like they weren't.
Yeah.
But like Holloway had a ton of, and like you said, if he moved his head, he had a bunch of chances to end that fight, and he kept getting caught. He got stunned like once or twice. I know, like you saw it because he was still able to because his conditioning is so good. But if he wasn't, conditioned and like he's taken those shots before. He's also one of the only. I think he's only like one of 3 UFC fighters to have like never been knocked down, like in a fight. So like he's never hit. I think it's him, Conor, and somebody else who have never actually been like knocked down at all or knocked out. So like again, he's got a chin. He can take those shots, but it's like, why take those shots if you don't have to?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like and for him, I mean, he went off and he was saying he's the best boxer in the UFC. I think he had a really good night. And I think he had a lot of good punches,
Bro,
but like
sometimes this fighter confidence fucking turns into some fucking weirdo clown shit. Like you can't come out of a fight looking the way that you look, saying, "Oh yeah, I'm the best." You know what I mean? It's like Tito after he beat Loma, his face is all fucked up. He's like, "Yeah, I fucking destroyed him." You know what I mean? Like you can't do that. You have some fucking brains, man. Check that ego a little bit.
Yeah. And like I said,
the best boxer, dude. His face was destroyed.
It really was. And like I said, he had a great performance.
Rocky.
Yeah, he had a great performance, but definitely not the best boxer. But yeah, so again, it was a good weekend. Wednesday, we have Neil Magny versus Michael Chiesa. That should be a really good fight. It's a pretty close fight on the odds. I think Magny's like a plus 115 favorite, and Chiesa's Magny's a minus 115 favorite, and Chiesa's a plus 115 underdog. I'm still going to stick with my guns here and go with Chiesa. I think he's going to pull this one out. And then boxing news, we'll go over that first, and then we'll get into this weekend stuff. Fury and Joshua, as Jake said, close to done last week. They were just kind of looking. He said that Eddie Hearn said that it's basically done.
Yeah. He said that it's they've agreed to the terms, and they're basically just looking for venue and date.
Cool. All right. Well,
it's going to happen this spring. Definitely.
Good. And I think that this is going to be that one of those big things that's going to, really push boxing, because this is a fight I think everybody, I mean, I don't think it's going to be as good of a fight as people think it's going to be.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be competitive at all. But
we'll talk to that when I get signed. But I think this is one of the bigger fights that's going to happen this year, except for a couple other ones. But this is going to really kick off boxing. And I don't know. I know there's a couple fights coming up. When's the next big fight besides like Fury?
The 30th of this month, Caleb Plant.
Oh yeah, Caleb Plant. All right, yeah.
He wins. He may be facing Canelo next, so it's a big fight.
Ah, well, that would be huge. But yeah, so not that much boxing going on this weekend. Next couple of weekends, there's going to be some stuff, like you said, on the 30th. But this weekend, we got Conor versus Dustin, which I am super excited about. We also have Michael Chandler versus Daniel Hooker. And then we got, let's see who else is on this card. There's a couple other fights before that, obviously. We got Jessica I and Joanne Calderwood. And I don't know these other. Amanda Ribas, I know. But cool. I'm just only gonna talk about Dan Hooker, Chandler, and Conor and Dustin. So this is the rematch from the first fight of Conor versus Dustin. Conor knocked out Dustin, I think it was in like 90 seconds, and he came out and said he's gonna knock him out in 60 seconds or under 60 seconds. He says a lot of people have been talking about Conor looking probably the best he's ever looked, and I don't know what they mean by that. He's looking sharp. He's looking good. He looks like he posted a picture on Instagram today, and he looks like he's ready to go. He's in shape. Dustin also is a great fighter. I think he's going to be ready to go as well. Dustin always gets a little too emotional for me as a fighter, and especially a fight like this. I think it could, if he's, and I think he has grown and he's shown a lot, but I think, that's always a factor to be settled with. But I want to actually start and come back around with Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler. So Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler is basically this, quote unquote, like Dan Hooker said, the new toy in the UFC. He got signed over from Bellator. He was on track to fight a couple months ago, and then he ended up not fighting because of COVID reasons. And then he was the backup for Habib Gaethje, and he weighed in for that fight, did everything he needed to do, didn't end up fighting. Was supposed to fight Tony Ferguson or Gaethje or something like that, but then ended up saying no because of like the weight cut. He didn't want to do another weight cut. So here he is. He got his first fight in the UFC, and it's not an easy one against Dan Hooker. Dan, the Hangman Hooker, they call him. He's a really good all-around fighter. He's 20-9. He's had a lot of good wins. He's had a lot of good fights. Chandler is, again, a smaller guy who's coming over from Bellator, who's, in my opinion, I've seen enough of him highlights wise to say that he's good. I think Dan Hooker's a really hard matchup for him because he's a little bit long and Chandler's not. Chandler's kind of like a brawler who likes to get inside and wrestle, and he's a wrestler. Hooker, I think, matches him with the wrestling, and it's really going to come down to striking and distance. I don't know what the odds are. Let me see. Should have probably looked this up before. Dan Hooker is the favorite against Michael Chandler. And then, I think that's good. He's not too much of a favorite, but he's up there. I think that, again, I think Hooker is going to take this fight. I think what he's going to end up doing is he's going to end up wearing Chandler down, keeping his distance, and being able to kind of like defend any attacks that Chandler may have. The thing he's got to watch out for is that, that hand of Chandler. If Chandler can get inside and kind of rough him up a little bit, I think he can win this fight. But I still think that Hooker is going to pull away here. And the cool thing about this fight and Conor fight, which I'll get to, there was some other big news in the UFC this weekend. And one of the biggest things to come out of this weekend was not even the Holloway win, but it was that Dana talked to Khabib. And he had a sit down with him, kind of went over everything that was going on in terms of his decision-making and what he wants to do. He says if someone impresses him this weekend, he may come back out to fight for the belt, but he's not going to hold up the division. So essentially what this is looking like, if Conor impresses him or something else impresses him, mainly Conor, I think that was the main idea here, is that like Conor is going to need to impress him. Khabib will come back and he's going to defend his belt or his title. If not, it looks like he's just going to kind of ride off and let it go and then let the next person kind of just win it. But this second card, or this second fight to the main card, Chandler versus Hooker, is going to kind of be the first domino to fall within this lightweight division that's got a bunch of names packed in it. If Chandler wins, he really could step up and find himself in a title fight. I don't know that he will, and Hooker's kind of a bigger name, but I don't know that he's good enough to step into that right away. I kind of see this right now as Chandler's very unproven in terms of like fighting in the caliber of UFC, and he's got a lot of good qualities and he's a good fighter, but I don't know if he's going to pull this out. And this can I feel like Hooker's in like a lose-lose situation, because I don't think this win is going to get him anywhere in terms of like taking that next step, but I don't think that him losing this fight is going to get him anywhere either. So, and I don't think Chandler, if he wins, is going to like jump into the conversation, but he's obviously going to be, one of the next people to at least attempt to get that. And then obviously we got the biggest fight is Conor and Dustin. So Conor is a 300 favorite, minus 300 favorite. Dustin's a plus 240 underdog. The way I see this fight going, and I can't admit I am a Conor fanboy. You can say that if you want. I don't think Dustin has gotten significantly better. I think he's good. I think he's in good shape. I know his coach, Phil Daru, he's one of my coaches and one of my mentors. And like, I've talked to him a couple of times about it, and we're in a group chat, and he's told us Dustin looks really good. Dustin is moving well. He's strong. He's healthy. I have a hard time believing from what I've seen from Dustin that he's going to come in here and not think about the last fight at all. And Conor's kind of taking a different approach to this, and they're respecting each other. Conor's not really talking. He's not talking shit like he usually does. I just think he's head and heels above everybody in the division except for Khabib. And I'm going to die on this hill. I think if he gets a second chance at Khabib, he's going to beat him. But for right now, facing Poirier, I think that Conor is a better striker. I think he's a better grappler, a significantly better grappler. I think that he's, or maybe not significant, but he's a better grappler. And I also think that, Dustin is sharp, and they go back into like this quote unquote, I don't know. I don't really know why they do this, but they talk about like boxers in the UFC, and they talk about like being the best boxer in the UFC. Like I've heard Dustin called the best boxer in the UFC in terms of like
fucking dude can't throw no punch. I mean, who said that?
He's like known as like one of the best like quote unquote boxers in the
like
UFC.
Who? MMA guy? I mean,
that's what I mean.
Let me quote Uncle Roger again. Most people don't know shit about boxing.
Yeah,
right?
And like he trains.
He can't throw a fucking punch to save his life.
Yeah, he's a very much like and again he's from what I've seen of Dustin, he's good, but he doesn't move well, like his head, and he ends up getting into like these hooks. Like he just kind of like continuously throws hooks as he's
an upright fighter.
Yeah,
like every time I've seen him fight, his knees are like it's like his knees don't even bend.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're not getting any leverage, you're not getting any power, you're off balance. The guy, no, it's the best boxer.
And again, I think that even if Conor isn't, let's say everyone's talking and he's not really the best he's ever been, and if he is, I don't think it's close. I think Conor head and heels is better than Dustin, and it's not even a question. And
just based off just tools, like in the toolbox, Poirier's not even close.
Yeah.
Just based on just like now where they are mentally, like that's a whole different thing. Like if Conor is sharp mentally, like people saying, oh, he looks better than he ever has. When has Conor never looked physically good? He's always looked good. He's always looked sharp. But it's like mentally, where is he at? I mean, the guy's loaded. He's wealthy now. So where is he at mentally? Right?
And I think
mentally, it's not even close because you come down to the actual skills, the fighting skills. It's not even close.
And I think that that's really what's going on here. Is I think that whatever was going on during the Khabib fight, whether he was doing coke or he was just drinking a lot, which he mentioned in his and if you can definitely listen to his latest interview with Helwani.
Yeah, I did. Yep.
Yeah, so he was talking about his last fight, and he was saying he was drinking his whiskey a lot, and he was heavy on the whiskey, and this camp and the Cerrone camp, he didn't drink it at all. Like it was very little, if at all. And I think with a guy like Conor, there's so many distractions that he let himself get involved with that when Khabib came, I think he was clearly drinking. He was doing whatever he was doing. They said he wasn't there for some of his practices. He didn't show up for some of them, or he was like really late. You can make all the excuses in the world, but you have to know that's your biggest fight and you have to be there. And I think now he knows the opportunity that he squandered, if that was the case. And, you saw it against Cerrone, and you're going to see it against Dustin. I think that Cerrone and Dustin are closer in comparison than Conor and Dustin. And it's making it be seen. I think that the skill set and the level of Cerrone and Poirier is very close, and Dustin and Conor is not, but they're making it seem like it is to make this a good fight. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Conor knocked him out in 60 seconds because he's done it before and he said it. But I do think what's going to happen here, I don't think Dustin's going to come out hot because Dustin tends to be a little bit hesitant in his first 90 seconds of the fight. It's almost like he's feeling out the fight and he's afraid to get hit. But then once that first 90 seconds is settled in, he tends to open up. And this is from a fight breakdown I saw. I forgot who I saw it from, but it was a really good kind of understanding of how Dustin fights. He comes out, he's a little bit hesitant. He doesn't really throw a lot. And that's what you kind of saw in the Conor fight for the first time was Dustin came out. He didn't throw a lot. Conor caught him with a kick and then a left hand. And then that left hand stunned him. And then Conor just clipped him again with the left hand. And that was it. And then he knocked him out and that was it. They also talked about Conor's weakness and kind of how to get him is, Conor, it looks like, and this is cool because breaking it down, I didn't really ever see this, or I just didn't pay attention to it. But when Conor fights, he tries to get people going to like his left hand, because obviously like going in the opposite direction, so he punches away. That's what he did to what's his name, the short dude, I can't remember his name, Uriah Faber's fighter. I'm blanking on it, but anyways, he did it to him. He did it to Cerrone. He's done it to, Aldo. It was all these people who were going into his left hand, and I think that's what he's looking to do. My prediction here, I think this will be a second or third round KO. I think Conor's going to knock him out. I think it'll be in the second or third. People talk about Conor's conditioning. They talk about he's not ready for this. He's not, he can't last 5 rounds. The only people I've ever seen Conor gas out against, besides, and when his younger fights, Chad Mendes was the guy I was thinking of. That wasn't who he gassed out against, but the only time he gassed out was against Floyd and Nate Diaz when he first went to 170. And I don't think people realize he went from 145 to 170 in 3 weeks to make that fight. So imagine if you gained 25 pounds to jump in weight class to fight a dude who's built for that division and is one of the best conditioned guys on the planet. Yeah. Like, you're going to look.
But the Conor's problem, and we talked about this before, is that he throws his shots like at 100% power when he doesn't need to.
Yep.
And that's what gasses him out. Because sometimes, like, and this is the thing, Conor's good at measuring and setting up shots. But he gets in these moments where he'll just try to like pot shot with that power shot and he'll miss.
Yep.
And he's thrown him full force and missing, and it's taken a lot out of him. And we also talked about this before. Conor does it too.
Yeah.
As good as he is with his hands, oftentimes he'll throw shots like he's throwing a baseball, and he'll lunge. His body will go over his front foot. And again, you're missing, you're pulling back. That's just that little bit that 1 second that it takes to pull back uses a lot more energy than it does if you're just turning on your waist and pulling back. It's a lot more energy when you're doing it over and over and over again. And we all know it takes a lot more out of you to miss a punch than to land a punch. So he gets into these moments where he's throwing harder than he really needs to.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I'm excited to see for him is, so Conor's probably the best striker in the UFC. Let's be like, just, skill for skill, pound for pound, whatever you want to call it. He's probably the best striker in the UFC. He's been working with his old boxing coach, Cutcliffe, I forgot his last name, from Dublin. He's been with him in his gym, like actually working on boxing, like specific boxing. I don't think he needs, Conor's got the rest of those skills down. He obviously works on them, but I think him cleaning up his boxing and actually working with a boxing coach, and I think this is what you talk about. If you get some of these dudes in there with like a real boxer, like an actual boxing coach who can actually help them, like their form, their speed, their footwork, I think he takes a huge step. Like, and I mean, like, and it's already like Conor's already better than a lot of people, but I think if this boxing stuff pays off, you're going to see it early, and you're going to see it if it goes late. You're going to see him hold up later in the fight, because like you said, I think what goes on here is there's a lot of boxing and punching end up going hand for hand, and they're not.
Yeah.
And I think what happens in UFC is there's a lot of punching that gets confused for boxing.
Yeah.
And boxing is a different level of punching.
Yeah.
So I think what happened here is Conor's very good puncher. And I think he's got, again, he's already better than 95% of the UFC. And I think that with his boxing help, I think he could take like a massive step. And I think that's one of the things that for him is going to put him over the top. And I don't know if you're familiar with his boxing coach or if you know anything about him, if he's ever, how good of
I've heard of him, but I'm not really familiar with it.
Yeah. And like, I know he's a good coach, and he's been sparring with like some of the top guys that he's got in Ireland, and like his top fighters and things like that. So, and again, like, I don't think Conor's too worried about Dustin on the ground. So I think just focusing on standing up, if he cleans up his boxing and he turns into even 50% better of a boxer, I don't think there's a chance. I don't think Dustin has a chance. Like, and he moves his head, you know, he cleans up his punches, like Jake's been saying, and Jake's been saying this for a while. And like, you know, he's actually I've seen it, but I didn't, you know, it's hard for, and I think this is where the struggle is like, it's hard for people who just watch UFC to know what like a clean punch looks like. You know, Conor connects and he knocks people out, but if Conor could clean shit up,
his accuracy is tremendous.
yeah.
But you see when he misses, that's when you see how sloppy it can be.
And I think if Conor cleans that up, you know how much better he could be. You know how many, you know how much better his knockout, or how more efficient, how like he won't get as tired.
And that's what it is, increasing efficiency.
Yeah,
you know what I mean,
so
that's what good boxing is, being efficient.
And I think
I mean, good fighting, period.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and like I said, I think that if Conor can do that, and I think if this boxing pays off for Conor, you're going to see it, and you're going to see it early. And I think he's going to piece up Dustin. I think Dustin's going to have some, you know, his moments if it lasts. But I don't think, you know, I don't see a way in which he's going to beat Conor, especially if Conor is as good mentally and physically as they're saying right now. If something happens and like mentally Conor's not there, or something comes up, which I doubt, Dustin may have a better chance, but I don't see this, you know, I don't see this going past 3 rounds, and I don't see Dustin standing a chance unless he changes something that I haven't seen before from him. And like, I don't think he's changed anything in his past 3 fights, you know, and he did against Khabib. I don't know how long he lasted against Khabib, but it was the same outcome. So like, you can't even play that card, like who did better against Khabib, but like, you know, but yeah, what were you going to say?
I think the worst version of Conor, from what I've seen from Poirier, the worst version of Conor destroys him.
Yeah.
I don't think it goes past, I don't think it goes past a round, to be honest.
You think he's going to end of the first?
Yeah. I think he'll get him out of there in the first round.
I mean, again, I would not be surprised.
And listen, I hate saying the shit about any fighter, any guy who's got it in him to get in a ring or an octagon or fuck in a street fight. But it seems like Poirier's one of those guys who gets his spirit broken easily.
And that's my biggest concern here, is that Poirier is a good fighter, but again, you get hit in the wrong way and it looks like he just kind of like breaks down. And then like, you know,
it looks like he's trying. And I've met a lot of guys like this. I've been in there with a lot of guys like this who are fucking, like, I've been in there with a lot of kids who are fucking, you know, on their way to the Olympics and shit. Very, very skilled. But when you hit them hard, like, especially like you go to the body and you make them uncomfortable, they start, their attitude starts to change in the ring. They don't like it. Yeah. And I think Poirier is one of those guys where, like, he's skilled, obviously, but it looks like when he does get touched, he does not like it. And part of being a great fighter is you got to be okay with getting smashed, because it's going to happen.
Yeah. So official predictions for this weekend, we got Dan Hooker versus Michael Chandler. I think Dan Hooker I don't think he's going to knock Chandler out, because I don't think Hooker's got that type of power. It could be like a TKO, like a stoppage, which I guess is technically a knockout, but technical knockout, right? I think Dan Hooker is going to win. I think this is a 3-round fight. So I think Dan Hooker will win by decision. And I also think Conor is going to win. I think it'll be a 2nd or 3rd round knockout. I would not be surprised if it doesn't last more than a round, but I'm going to give Dustin the benefit of the doubt, because I do think he's grown as a fighter. But I don't think it's that much that he's going to stand a chance right this weekend. But yeah, so other than that, we just got this huge fight, which is going to really unfold. And I think I think the most exciting thing here overall is that if Conor does impress and he does come out like he says he is, and he knocks Dustin out in 60 seconds or in the first round, it's going to set up Khabib Conor 2, which I think needs to be the next fight. I think, again, I don't think Conor, it's not an excuse that Conor wasn't ready, if he actually wasn't ready to fight the first time, but
that's part of being a fighter. It's part of who you are as a fighter. He obviously seemed a little off.
Yeah.
Hey man, that's on you.
Yeah.
That's on you as a fighter.
It's not an excuse. And honestly, like, I'd love to see the second fight versus Khabib, but at the same time, if he doesn't get it, that's his fault, you know? And I'm interested in whatever happens next, because this is the domino. I've been talking about these other dominoes, like Tony Ferguson losing to Oliveira was a domino. This Michael Chandler versus Dan Hooker is going to be a domino. Justin Gaethje losing to Khabib was a domino. Like all these little dominoes, Conor is the single most important one that whatever happens here is going to adjust and change the rest of what's going on in the next couple months. Because even Dana said it, his dream scenario here is Conor wins, fights for the belt, and then defends it this year. Whether that's against Khabib or someone else, there's a lot of people who are lining up to want to fight Conor, and Conor might come or go to 170, or Nate might come down, whatever. They were talking about a ton of stuff, but Conor is the single most important domino to fall this weekend. And, if he wins, and when I think he wins, it's going to really start to adjust the framework, and it's make this year a lot more exciting, and hopefully a lot more of Conor versus whoever wants to try to, step in there with him.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this weekend goes. But again, Conor, second or third round for me. Jake thinks end of the first round, or won't even last a round. Dan Hooker for me is going to be a decision victory within the 3 rounds. And and then not really any boxing again this weekend, just the news, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua almost done. And then Wednesday night, we have Michael Chiesa versus Neil Magny. I went with Michael Chiesa. I picked that on the last one. We did this podcast a little bit sooner than I thought, so I'm going to reiterate that decision there and go Michael Chiesa. But yeah, if you guys have any thoughts, comments, suggestions on the fight cast, your opinions for Conor versus Dustin, I'd love to hear it. And we'll go from there. I appreciate you guys listening. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Peace.